Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
DHG is a full-service accounting firm serving Memphis and the Mid-South region for more than 60 years, combining community involvement with the technical resources of a national firm. For more information, visit dhgllp.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
John Atkin on the Collierville School System tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I am joined today by Superintendent John Atkin from the Collierville School System. Thanks for being back.
Thanks for having us.
It's 1 year in, give or take. I think probably about a year ago, I think we had you on the show as you're gearing up for your first year. And we'll talk about this year that's passed. But the big issue at the moment in Collierville is a proposal for a new high school, a renovation of the existing high school into a middle school. It's a $100 million proposal. You think big. You think big and you think early, I guess, although I assume this need has always been there. But let's start there and talk about why. Why this proposal, which is a big and expensive and ambitious endeavor?
Well, I think you go all the way back, Eric, to legacy Shelby County schools. Residents of Collierville, when they reached high school, depending on where they lived in Collierville, could go to Houston High or to Collierville High, depending on how the attendance zones were drawn up. So when we took the job last January, the immediate need we recognized is due to the agreements that were reached when municipal school districts were formed, it guaranteed enrollment only to Collierville residents. Same thing in Germantown as we work around the municipalities. So we quickly realized that if all Collierville residents came to Collierville High School or our two middle schools, that we had a pretty serious capacity problem in enrollment. And when you start phasing in kids from Germantown, we reached a 3-year interlocal agreement with them to kind of handle some transition. We even looked at converting the existing high school where we now have our offices to a 9th grade academy. It just wasn't feasible. So we had to enter an ILA, an interlocal agreement with Germantown schools that allowed those kids that were already at Houston Middle and Houston High, if they so chose, to stay there through their exit year, either the 8th grade or their graduation. So it quickly became apparent that as they exited the 8th grade, we were gaining about 150 kids each year in the high school from straight Collierville residents. So we started down, we hired architects, we started looking at the feasibility study of the existing high school, kind of plowed down the road of what is the solution to this. Yeah. So after months and months of study, and we're still in the middle of that, we listen to the public. You know, social media is alive and well everywhere, and we get comments, you know, why are you doing this? We had a public meeting. We've been before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen many times. And we looked at the option. How can we best address, first of all, a growing high school population and overtaxed 2 middle school facilities that are growing as well, and even looking at temporary needs. We've tried to keep the focus on vision. Let's look at what Collierville's going to look like in 30 years. Collierville, we feel, is primed to be, you know, the premier community in this area. Growing, there's land available, all those types of things. So we brought to the board a recommendation to build a single high school for the town of Collierville and then convert the existing to a middle school, and it would take care of our needs for a lot of years. Now, that's kind of where we are now. And so the Board of Aldermen passed a 20-cent tax increase on first reading. Is that correct? Second reading.
On second reading. So it's still, there's a public meeting next Tuesday?
The 22nd is the BMA meeting, right.
So you're still underway. You've kind of cleared one hurdle, but there's some more hurdles to go. Will it ultimately go, that tax increase is really to fund a bond issue, is that correct?
Yeah, it is, because the way it rolls and your rules for issuing bonds, you have to have the tax base and the revenue to be able to handle the debt service.
And then use some of the sales tax increase that went in when all the suburban schools were established. There was a half cent or a quarter that was put in. So applying some of between the property tax increase and the sales tax, you would be able to fund and pay for something like a $90 to $100 million bond
That is
issue.
exactly where we are right now.
Will that then, just for process point of view, will this go to a public referendum?
There's always that chance.
It's a chance.
Yeah, there's always that chance. If they come back to BMA on the third reading and
Board of Mayor
and Alderman. I'm sorry. In education, we do these acronyms.
Yeah. No,
I
that's all right. That's all right.
If they come back and the citizens wish to challenge that, there's a particular certain number of voters that can sign a petition, and it could go to a referendum. I think our job, we're having a public meeting on Tuesday night the 16th at Collierville Methodist Church, is to continue to educate on why we have come up with this proposal, why we think it's the best proposal, and educate our folks who may be unsure to keep them from going to a referendum, that they realize it's the right choice.
Right, and I think we ran numbers at Daily News that that the average tax bill would go up around $152 a year, something like that.
That's correct.
Just to focus on the dollars and cents for a second, have you had people express concern that, oh boy, here it comes? This is the first of the school expenses getting out of control. We were promised, there wouldn't be a big tax increase. I mean, I've seen some people say that.
Sure.
We were promised when we voted to establish our own schools as part of the deconsolidation process and all that history, this would cover it. There wouldn't be any more expenses. And now suddenly, 1 year in, we're looking at a 20-cent property tax increase, not 20%, 20-cent property tax increase. And we're looking at a $100 million bond issue. Whoa.
Right. And I think probably when you look back at all the meetings that we had for formation of school districts with consultants who provided the feasibility study, the fact that you now have municipal school districts, the capital needs of those schools in that district now fall into the laps of the funding body, and now the funding body is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. In legacy Shelby County Schools, we built many schools all around the county due to growth. That was handled in a bigger pool of money, for lack of a better word, and the impact might not have even been known to the public. Now capital needs, we still receive some deferred maintenance money from the county commission by an ADA basis. So now those capital needs are here. And the consultants always said in any feasibility study or meeting that the half-cent sales tax will be sufficient for operating cost. And it has been. The sales tax is generating more revenue than what the town is required to give us, and that's part of what they're looking at to help service the debt. So you've got a couple of different things, but operating expenses, we are sufficiently covered by the maintenance of effort amount of it's about $2.2 million for us that's generated by that half cents.
Right. It is interesting, and I know you used to be over the Arlington schools and the Lakeland school and the whole Shelby County schools. You're not anymore. You may love that. I don't know. We won't go there. But it is interesting to see that Lakeland voted down. The residents voted down a big bond issue for what was it, a $20 million, $50 million, middle school and high school. It seems in the past, like as you were saying, in the old legacy Shelby County school system, people might not have been as attuned to what's going on, and maybe it was all of the county voting for it or all these municipalities voting for it. Now you've got a real local sales job that you, and I don't mean that in a cynical way, but you really do. You've got to make your case to the local people in a way you, as superintendent of the whole district, maybe didn't quite have to do quite as
you had to sell it to the county commission in those days.
And then you could horse trade, I assume.
Right.
You could say, well, if we're going to do this for Lakeland, we might do this for Collierville, and Germantown wants this, and we'll all kind of put a package together.
And we had needs assessment, and we forecast out 10 years, and here are our needs, and moving forward. And we've done the same thing with Collierville schools. It's the fact that capital needs and the funding of those capital needs now have to be funded by your funding body. So that's why it's such a local topic. But I still feel confident that if we can get people to a public meeting and we can educate those that don't go on websites, those that don't go on social media, we're going to do some things through the traditional media. I feel confident that there is still a lot of misinformation out there that people just don't know why we need a school. And all they're seeing is $90 to $100 million, and that we're building this extravagant. Our square feet cost per square foot is probably the median of this region right now in our program. And our program really hadn't been developed. And part of what we're trying to educate is until we have land purchased, site developed, and all those things, and we get bids out, and all of our costs come in. The number is it's an estimate now based on. But we're confident that our square foot price is well in line with construction in this area, even below in some regions.
And it's some of the details on that. This would be, the current high school is maxed out at 2,000.
Right. The maximum capacity, when you look at a programmatic capacity, is 2,000 students.
Right.
It's kind of like an elevator. When you walk on an elevator and they say maximum capacity is 44 people or so many pounds, well, if you got 44 people and so many pounds, and it's pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Same thing on a crowded airplane. You know, it's kind of uncomfortable. Everybody's been on a full airplane before. You're here.
Yeah.
That's the way it is in a high school today.
So if you estimate out that this new high school will be 3,000, again, you're saying that's 20, 30 years. I mean, you think that sets the system up for the potential growth for quite some time.
And part of our plan is as we plan the initial site and the initial facility, we're looking at to accommodate 3,000 students, but planning for future infrastructure needs are going to be planned for more than 3,000. And when I say that, a cafeteria big enough for more than 3,000.
I got you.
Our issue right now at Collierville High, in main cases, is hallways. The hallways are narrow. We've had to go to one-way hallways in some cases just to keep the traffic flow.
How do you get kids to go in one direction? I can't get my own kids to go in one direction.
And it's amazing. I walk in the cafeteria at Collierville High School sometimes, and it blows my mind how well-behaved those kids are.
Right.
And I've always felt that if you stay positive with kids and you give them some parameters and high expectations, they do what you need them to. And that's happening every day there. So I applaud everything going on there today, but 150 more next year.
Yeah.
And 150 more, we'll have to put portables beginning the 16-17 school year to, kind of as a Band-Aid to get us to the construction time.
Right. You have 5 elementary schools. Is that enough in your projections right now?
Right now it is. Right now we're pretty stable, but you can spread those out among 5 facilities as well.
Yeah. Okay. And then there are 2 middle schools which are pretty well. We talked before the show. Pretty pushing the seams. Is that correct?
Schilling Farms Middle right now is past capacity. They have 8 portables on site now. The new Collierville Middle is probably in its 3rd year of existence. It's already at capacity. We even looked at trying to shift some, but we couldn't even shift some from Collierville Middle. From Schilling Farms Middle to Collierville with rezoning because it just kind of swapped the problem.
Yeah. So you would take the existing high school, turn that into a middle school, and you think that gives you the breathing room for the foreseeable future?
I do. I think that takes care of our needs. And you can even go further down. And if you had to plan, if you got to a point where you needed an elementary school, you have a big enough facility at the current high school that would then be a middle school.
So you wouldn't have a land
You could convert a middle school to an elementary and then make a little bit bigger enrollment middle school. Now, is that ideal? No, but it would give you some solutions.
One thing I thought was really interesting in the presentation, which is on your site, I think it's on our site, it's out there. Give people the address where they can get to the presentation on the school.
www.onetown1school.org, I believe.
But if you Google or Yahoo Collierville schools, you'll get to. That's how I did it this morning.
I had my button on earlier.
There you go. The emphasis on one high school I thought was really interesting. So you've got the 5 lower schools, you've got the 2 middle schools, but you really emphasize it because you studied the idea of just kind of expanding, renovating the existing high school, building a smaller high school, having maybe 2 high schools.
Right.
You didn't want that. You wanted one high school for Collierville.
Right.
Why?
Community unity. I mean, honestly, there's something about the pride in a community. But it goes beyond that. It goes to operational cost. We still got to build a middle school in any scenario. So if you built the second high school, you still got to build a 3rd middle school. So you'd have 2 construction projects going on at the same time. So that part of it, and the operating cost of a 3rd facility, for lack of a better word. But to me, I tell this story from personal experience. I was a principal at Houston High School for a long time. And I reaped the benefits of kids coming from Collierville. I reaped the benefits of kids coming from a lot of places. But I saw what it did to Germantown.
Yeah.
I want single community, unity in a community. Everybody, when they start school in kindergarten, become a dragon.
Okay, and is it that, and then I'll move on, but the competition thing, I mean, it's great, the sports competition, you've got competition within Collierville, but is it that people say, well, they're putting the new computers in this high school and
that
the old
one's
not.
Of it.
They're putting, and so it's a negative competition.
Saw it happen with Houston and Germantown when Houston was built, and the perceived thought that Houston's facilities were better or Houston had better things. It was wrong, but both of them had strengths. But I think you hit up on a great point there, Eric, is that you would have a new high school with new facilities on a new site, new athletic facilities, new auditorium, new band room, go on, and a facility that's on a landlocked site that would still have to go to a separate site because our football stadium and our track are behind the elementary school. So you would have that perceived lack of equity, for lack of a better word.
Okay. It's been the first year. I think it was about a year ago. I'm pretty sure we had you on the show, and you were going into your first year. So separate from this issue of the high school, how did the first year go?
I think it went great. And I know you've interviewed other superintendents. I couldn't be more pleased. Was it perfect? Not by any means. But for a startup of when we started in January and we had 6 months to kids would be in classes, you know, we had to do bus service, nutrition services, all those things that go in, staff, 8,000, you know, students coming to school, employees, you got almost 800 employees to staff and on board and do all those things, and incredibly hard work by a lot of people. But I think probably what helped us, and I look back on this now, is most of the other municipal superintendents I worked with, or they worked right under me. You know, I knew most of them, and we made the pact early on that we met at least once a week and sometimes 2 weeks, starting in January of 2014. And we copied best practices, and we hired a lot of people who had been, you know, doing those best practices and those operational things, and we pulled together, give all credit to David Stevens, it was his idea of a shared services model where he and I, for the most part, shared some of those different operational procedures and practices. He has purchasing and payroll. I have transportation and nutrition, and we do it on a per pupil basis, and we in effect are vendors to other systems.
Yeah.
But I think us getting together, pulling the same thing, we use TSBA, we use the consultants' work, but that collaboration early on, as we walked through things, and if somebody got something from the state and they said, "Did y'all get this?" That relationship piece probably was the most instrumental thing in getting us off to a successful start.
And did you come in, I mean, just a simple question, did you come in over budget, under budget from an operational point of view?
We're going to come in under budget. The audit reports are out now. They're in the middle of it, and we're waiting on that. But it's been phenomenal. Could we have done that without the support of the town? No. One benefit of the formation of municipal school districts being delayed a year by the judge was that sales tax revenue was still being generated. So each municipality had some cushion. So the town of Collierville has, I can't say enough about their generosity and their willingness to work with us, because it has quickly become the pride of the community. And people stepped in and they were determined that it was going to work and did everything they could to make it work.
School funding for all schools in Tennessee comes from a mix of sources. One of the big ones is the state is the biggest source, I believe.
Right, and it is.
That through the BEP funding. I need Bill here. He's on another assignment today, but to go through the history of BEP funding. But it's the formula that the state has to fund schools. It's being challenged by Chattanooga, I think Shelby County now, the Legacy Memphis schools, however you want to frame that, is joining in. How do you feel about that formula of state funding, and any chance that Collierville would jump in on that lawsuit?
Our board has not had any concerns about jumping in at this time. We have had discussions, and we're kind of watching it. I kind of feel like if it blossoms and moves on, that it will probably become part of a cooperative type of action where all districts might get involved. That's kind of the thought, but may or may not happen. But again, our board hasn't. BEP's formula is so complex and complicated that, you know, they've been through a lawsuit, the small schools, 25, 30 years ago that took forever to get settled and put back in court again. I really feel like the people in Nashville, starting with the governor, really want to make it right, and they've made some strides. But it does have some flaws. But it's a funding formula. It's not perfect by any means. And you know what it is going in. You just have to make some adjustments. Would anybody like more money? Sure. Put it to the right place. It reaps its benefits. But right now, no discussions from our board.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, just given the long history of the merger and the demerger and the lawsuits and just everything that's going on, I mean, is that a cautionary tale for you, from your point of view, of getting involved with a lawsuit? It sounds,
it's costly
good
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us in our startup, we're running on tight budgets, and something like that would add a lot of cost to that comes straight out of operating funds that I'd rather use in a classroom or buying a computer or toward construction of a new high school.
Yeah, right, absolutely. We talked a little before the difference of having a school board that's so local. It is all made up of people who are vested in the Collierville schools. Again, in comparison, when you were the superintendent of the district, you had everything from Millington to Collierville and all in between. It's a little different to have a school board that's so local.
Yeah, it's refreshingly different. Here's why. You've got five first of all. In Legacy Shelby, we had 7. Now, my opinion is probably skewed because I lived through the days of 23.
Yeah.
And marathon board meetings as the merger talks, and when we were still 2 separate, and you had 2 superintendents, and you were over 23 board members. So my opinion of now why this is so much better is, first of all, size. But the quality of the board members, they are extremely dedicated. Part of that comes, you've got former educators, you've got attorneys, you've got a great mix of people, but they have had kids in schools. They are living in the community. They are in tune with the needs of the community.
Yeah.
Because Collierville, the citizens let our board members and us know, what they expect. Collierville is a town of such high expectations, and the schools have been good out there for a long time. Our job is to continue that, but the local control piece is fun.
Yeah.
It's nice. When you have 5, you can have good conversations. People, are in tune with what's going on.
Because it is different. I remember so there's consolidation and then there's deconsolidation, and people say, well, we just ended up with what we had. We have a city school system and we have this suburban system, but we don't.
We don't.
And a lot of people, and I understand why, because it's just a lot of information. It was very complicated. It's actually a series of very independent schools. You share, as you talked about, back-end services and certain things, but you're all about Collierville.
I'm all in for Collierville, but have good friends on others, and we still share best ideas, and like you say, the shared services model. What I have quickly found out is there's pretty intense competition among the school districts.
Well, absolutely, and that's really, so a week or 2 ago, I've lost track of time, we had the head of the Arlington school and the Lakeland school, and this we're going to try to have all the suburban school superintendents on over the course of the summer. We had Dorsey Hobson and Chris Barbick on, more focused on the city schools. But that sense of competition is pretty obvious.
It is.
I mean, and
it's healthy though.
Right.
It is healthy. I mean, it really is. I mean, we've all been friends and we're rivals, but it's pretty intense sometimes when somebody in one district hears what another district's doing, and they come to you, well, I don't know, what.
And that's a change. You've been in education how long?
35 years.
Talking with Dorsey Hobson and from the Shelby County School System, the superintendent there, and Chris Barbick from the ASD, and we were talking mostly about the underperforming schools and the efforts to them. They're in intense competition.
Sure,
they're
in
a competition for talent. They're in a competition for money, for facilities, for attention, and everything. But they sat here together, and they're really tremendously respectful of one another because they feel like they have the same end goal. Are you in competition with the other school systems in terms of talent? I don't know what you are for kids, but certainly talent and money.
Sure. I mean, I think absolutely in hiring of teachers and how you compensate and all those types of things that some of us may do differently. You laugh about Dorsey and Chris being on here. The 4 of us rode, 4 municipal superintendents rode to Jackson. We ride back and forth to Nashville to meetings and all the time. We get a lot done on those rides, but they're friends of mine too, and that helps. But kids, there's competition for kids too, because really kids still have kind of a choice. There's more choice for kids out there now. So you have to be on your A game, but I still go back to each of us as municipal superintendents, and then I'll go back just talk about us. Each of us wants our school district to be the best in this state.
Yeah.
And that healthy rivalry will help all of us to get to that point. But I think Collierville is really poised with everything going on economically, commercially, school system wise, is really poised to become the premier community. And I know that sounds like bragging, but I believe it.
Yeah. Just 3 minutes left here. A couple of questions. Do you have kids from out of Collierville? Because I know
do.
You do.
We do.
How give me the numbers and how that works?
Yeah, we're probably, if you want to break it down school-wise, we're right at this coming year. We'll have about 100 non-residents at Collierville High School. Now, most of those are from the reserves, the North Reserve and the South Reserve.
Okay.
But they had to apply through non-resident application. Okay. We have a very small number, probably less than 40 from Fayette County that applied. Right. They have to pay a tuition. That's the difference in the two, the tax revenues, about $3,700 a piece. But we are so tight at the middle school and the high school this coming year that we just could not allow any new non-residents.
If this new high school gets built, would you see more non-residents coming in?
I think you might if you have capacity, but that becomes a political football as well, because if they're not contributing to the property tax revenue, you have the citizens saying, well, what's their skin in the game? They shop in Collierville, their sales taxes are all in Collierville. So there may be a mechanism where we could come up with a fee or a non-resident tuition that would offset that.
You talked about competition among the schools. One of the main ways in which people measure that is the tests and the TCAP. There's some hullabaloo about TCAP scores that came out that I quite honestly don't understand.
Well, it's
what was
complicated. It's, in years past, the state law requires your score on your end of course test or your TCAP test in elementary and middles to be counted as part of your grade. And the way that score is converted adds to the confusion. It doesn't have anything to do with proficiency levels as far as proficient and advanced at that level, but there's a formula, the cube root method, that they used, and the confusion was last year it resulted in a score, let's say of 85, might have been a proficient score, but this year when they did all the conversions, it was an 89 that you had to have the cut score to be proficient. So it's really terminology. Our piece of that is just communicating out what that means as we move through the summer, but we're confident that our scores are going to come in great, so it'll work out.
And we could do a whole show on Common Core. We have a minute left.
Yes, we could.
Are the new standards, there's a change of branding, if nothing else, on Common Core and some changes in standards. I mean, are you happy with the direction of those standards coming from the state?
Yeah, I think for the most part I am. I've always felt like we test too much, and I would love to see some us go back someday to when you and I went to school. We didn't take all of the proficiency tests moving through. But I think in the world of accountability we're in, that's inevitable. I appreciate the fact that they underwent a standards review process that is now meeting at the state level, and we had some people. So that piece of it I totally agree with.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Good night.
DHG is a full-service accounting firm serving Memphis and the Mid-South region for more than 60 years, combining community involvement with the technical resources of a national firm. For more information, visit dhgllp.com.